Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cognitive Edge, where teachers, librarians, technology professionals, and educational leaders come together to examine the ideas shaping education. I am your host, Dr. Daniel A. Sabol, and today we're going to be discussing an ability every student needs to um, have, but many students never fully develop. And that's how to conduct great research. But more importantly, it's asking the questions that are, there in your head about, does this research support what you're trying to prove or what you're trying to say? And so the title of today's broadcast is Beyond Google, Teaching Students to Become Great Researchers. And let me just begin here with a difficult question. Are we teaching students how to conduct research, or are we merely teaching them how to collect information? It's been seen from both points of view, and we want to make sure that we're conducting research um, and not just teaching them how to collect information. Um, and the two things are not the same either. A student can collect information in seconds, and the student can enter a few words into Google and open the full first three results, copy several sentences, and put together something that resembles a research paper. Now, with artificial intelligence, that same student can now generate an organized essay, a list of sources, and even a set of conclusions um, almost instantly. I mean, much faster than a long time ago. However, speed does not equal understanding. A polished document is not necessarily evidence of learning. A long bibliography is not necessarily evidence of careful investigation. A confident answer is not necessarily the correct answer. Research requires much more than finding information. Um, it requires curiosity, judgment, persistence, and verification, organization, and the willingness to change one's mind when the evidence demands it. Today, I want to discuss how teachers and librarians can help students become thoughtful, capable, and independent researchers. Research, it really begins with a big question. Students, they are often assigned a broad research topic. They may be told to research climate change, artificial intelligence, or the Civil War, social media, renewable energy, or a famous historical figure. These topics may be important, but they are too broad to guide a meaningful investigation. A topic tells students what general area to explore. A research question tells them what they are trying to understand. So, for example, social media is definitely a topic, but something like how does the use of social media before bedtime affect the sleep habits of, say, middle school students? That's more of a research question. Artificial intelligence in education is a topic. How can generative artificial intelligence support student learning without replacing the practice or practical or practice required to develop expertise in research questions? The quality of the research really also depends on the quality of the question. When students begin with weak questions, they usually produce or generate general reports filled with disconnected facts. When they begin with focused questions, they're more likely to compare evidence, identify relationships, reorganize disagreements, and move things around. Teachers and librarians should therefore spend more time helping students create research questions before asking them to search for the answer. A strong research question should be focused enough to investigate, broad enough to require analysis, and open enough that the answer is not obvious from the beginning. It should invite students to examine evidence rather than simply confirm what they already believe. Students should also understand that research questions can change. Good researchers frequently revise their questions as they learn more. And this is not a sign of failure, it's a sign of evidence that your thinking is becoming more precise. So, moving beyond the first search result, many students believe that research begins and ends with Google. Um, Google is a powerful discovery tool, but it's not a quality control system. Search results are ranked upon many factors, including relevance, population, location, personalization, and commercial considerations. The first result is not automatically the most accurate or appropriate source. Students may learn that searching it's really actually a strategy. Changing one word in a search term in a search string can change the results completely. Placing a phrase in quotation marks can produce more precise results. Removing unnecessary words can broaden the search, and adding populations or precise people to the search can broaden it. Students can be taught really to um, work on and develop their concepts in their research question and develop multiple search terms for each concept. So suppose a student is researching whether school starts, start time, school start times affect adolescent learning. Possible search terms may include school start time, adolescent sleep, teen academic performance, secondary education, student attention, and circadian rhythm. The student should not depend on one search phrase. Research requires trying different combinations, reviewing the results, and adjusting the search. This is one of the places where librarians are especially important. Librarians understand that databases, that they have subject headings, search operators, their source types, citation rails, and different information systems. And teachers understand the curriculum, the assignment, the students, and the learning goals. Librarians understand how information is created, organized, located, evaluated, and used. When teachers and the librarians work together, students receive something much stronger than a list of websites. They receive an actual research education. This is where teaching students to evaluate sources comes in. Finding a source is really only the beginning. Students must determine whether the source deserves their trust. A website can look professional and still contain misleading information. A social media post can include statistics without explaining where those statistics originated. A video can contain emotional testimony but offer little reliable evidence. And an article can post one side of information, ignoring a complicated, complete other argument. Students, they need a practical evaluation process. They should begin by examining authorships, who created the information, what qualifications or experience does the author have, is the author clearly identified, and can the author's background be verified? Next, students should examine the publication. Where did the information appear? Is it a scholarly journal, government website, news organization, professional association, a personal blog, a commercial website, or an anonymous social media account? Students should then consider the evidence. Does the source provide data, documentation, references, quotations, or links to other material? Can its claims be verified elsewhere? Does this stuff that's on its website actually have support to back it up? Currency, it also matters. When was the source published or last updated? A historical source does not become one unless it becomes old. So it takes longer and longer for it to grow into what it should be. Purpose is equally important. Was the information created to educate, persuade, entertain, advertise, provoke, or sell something. A source can have a point of view and still be useful. The important question is whether students recognize that point of view and account for it. Finally, students must examine relevance. A credible source may still be the wrong source for a particular question. A general encyclopedia article might provide valuable background, but it may not contain the depth required for an advanced research project. We should not teach students that sources are simply good or bad. Source evaluation is contextual. A social media post may be weak evidence for a scientific claim, but it could be an excellent primary source for examining how misinformation spreads. The better question is not only is the source credible, the better question is the source appropriate for the claim I am making? Comparing sources instead of trusting one. Students sometimes they treat research as a hunt for the one perfect source that is going to have the complete answer. And important questions rarely have one simple answer. Different sources may use different methods, examine different groups, uh, emphasize different evidence, or research different conclusions. Students need to learn how to place sources in conversations with one another. Do the sources agree? If so, what evidence supports that agreement? Do they disagree? If so, why? Was one source conducted with a large group? Is one source more recent? Did the researchers define no issue that was different or describe it differently? Does one author have a financial or political interest in a conclusion? The comparison is where research begins to become intellectually meaningful. Students move from repeating with uh, what one author said to analyzing a body of evidence. They begin to recognize that knowledge is not merely deposited in finished form, it is constructed through investigation, debate, correction, and continued examination. A simple classroom strategy is really to ask to create an evidence chart. In one column, the students they record the source, and in another they identify a central claim. In additional columns, they record the evidence, limitations, perspectives, and relationships to the other sources. This is a nice way to help students see patterns. It also makes it harder to write a paper by copying one source at a time. Very true. Um, the last subject is the role of artificial intelligence. We cannot discuss student research today without discussing AI or artificial intelligence. AI can support research in useful ways. It can help students brainstorm possible questions, identify keywords, explain unfamiliar terminology, suggest different perspectives, create an organizational structure, or help students even understanding a difficult passage. However, AI can also generate inaccurate information, invented quotations, non existent publications, and citations that look completely believable. The last point is it's especially dangerous. Students often um, assume that confidence indicates accuracy. AI systems can present false information in polished language. Um, so you can submit a paper that looks professional and is perfect, but it's really not 100% um, the best work you may hand in. All right. Well, thanks for listening to the Cognitive Edge. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.